I've had an accident and I've hurt myself, but I'll be all right soon. I'm having treatment.
Thank you very much for being here. My name is Rahul Rawail, and this is a great moment for me where we unveiled the cover of the book for the first time today. Right.
Thank you so much for being with us. Can you hear me?
No,
Hello?
mic.
Hello, hello. Hello, can you hear me?
No, it's
No.
good.
Yes, I think that's loud and clear. So we are going to have this interesting conversation about the book and about the inspiration and of course the life and times of Raj Saab. So I'm going to address my first question to you, sir. Raj Kapoor, the actor, Raj Kapoor, the director, Raj Kapoor, the man. All have had a tremendous influence on your life. Well, so what was your first impression of Raj Saab?
I knew Raj much before I started working with him. He was always around with me, and the children and we had grown up together. And then the impression, when I saw him working, changed a lot to me. I wanted to become a nuclear physicist, and I went onto the sets and saw Raaz working there, and everything changed for me. So I am where I am today because of that one bit. And for me, this book is not about Raj Kapoor the showman, which a lot of people written about and they refer to him as a showman. It's about Raj Kapoor at work. A girl called Kanika Sharma, who's helped me in writing the book, she told me, she said, sir, you're a lucky man to have a first day, first show ticket of watching Raj Kapoor working and all through, you spend all this time with him. And it was a wonderful experience, and very supportive in this whole endeavor has been Mr. Randhir Kapoor over here. And without him also this book would have been done.
Thank you so much. Sir, I'm going to address that question to you, but in a slightly different way. Raj Kapoor, the filmmaker Raj Kapoor, the father. What was that like, that experience? What do you remember best? What do you remember more?
Well, I'll sum it very fast and very short. He was a wonderful father and even better director. I admired him very much as all of you do. I loved him also as much as you do. He was my father and he was your favorite. That's how I would sum him up. And he was very passionate about his work, which is one quality that many have not been able to imbibe, including me. It's very difficult to be Raj Kapoor again. He was a one-man circus by himself. He was a producer, he was a director, he was an actor, he was a writer, he was a music director, all in one. He could make everything himself, but he never took credit for it himself. I'd heard songs of films that he made maybe 20 years later, or 30 or 40 years later, and those compositions were there and those films in his background music, but he made them into songs later, because they were all his. And like I always told him, you're the master of all. It's a one-man circus called Raj Kapoor.
Perfect. So that leads me to wondering, what was your first thought when you heard that Rahul Rawail is writing a book about your father?
Oh, I was very happy and very touched. Rahul has been closest to Mr. Raj Kapoor, the filmmaker. He admired him a lot, and he was his favorite shishya. And Raj Kapoor was the guru. And I knew about that from my father himself. So when he told me, besides being a colleague of mine, I have worked under his direction. He is a great friend of mine also. So in spite of my ill health, my leg being not serviceable, I am still here because I love him as much as my father also loved him. And we all have our own best wishes for him. He's done a very good job. I have read many passages from the book. I haven't read the full book because he just gave it to me yesterday. But I've read many passages from it, and I think it deserves to write what he did about him. And it'll be very fair. It's not about Raj Kapoor, the showman, and his personal life and all. This is the master at work, the maestro. And he knew him closest, and I think this is a very fair account of Mr. Raj Kapoor's work that he has come across with.
Sir, I would like to ask you, when did you actually start work on the book and how long did it take? What was the experience?
Well, the book, the seed was implanted into my mind by Mr. Apurva Asrani, who was the writer of Shahid. We were on the jury of the Indian Panorama. And I should keep talking about Raj Kapoor, how he worked. And he said, Rahul, why don't you write a book on Raj Kapoor? So that struck me. And I went to Chintu, that Vishnu, who was a very dear childhood friend. We were from nursery school together. And he's not here anymore. And I went to him and he said, you must write this book. And then I went to Dabusam, Mr. Randhir Kapoor. Because without the family poking in, I would not do the book. And Dabusam, as he's always been, was extremely supportive. I spoke to Chimpu, Rajiv Kapoor is not with us. I spoke to their sister Ritu, who is not here. Then Rima, also I spoke to. And finally I went to the matriarch of the family, that was Krishna Aunty. And when I told Krishna Aunty I'm planning to do this book, she said, Rahul, you must do it. Because you are the only living person who knows how my husband worked. And if this knowledge is not shared, it will die away. So please go ahead and do this. And that was really the impetus which got me to go ahead and work on this. Though it's all done from memory, I had no written notes, I remembered him. He was so much, that influenced me so much. And from memory, this whole book came about. And it contains lots of anecdotes, his quirkiness. All geniuses are quirky, right? His quirkiness, his immense fondness for food. He was a complete foodie, which we all are. And so are the sons, stuff from there. And then essentially the 10 chapters in the book which describe the way Raj Kapoor worked. Alright, we while watching his films do not realize what was behind a particular scene. Right? Every scene which he shot, there was a reason behind his doing it. And that is explained in detail in the book. And to me that is in fact the mainstay of this book. And for people who are students of cinema or who are filmmakers, apart from that, people who have a hunger for knowledge of anything, I'm one of those. I like to book on anything because I have a hunger for knowledge. I hope at least this book would provide them with that kind of thing.
So, I'm sure you were close to everybody in the family, and of course, you were very close to the man himself, and you would be the best equipped to write something like this. And I'm sure it's got fascinating portions to it.
Well, the fascinating things which he said, like he told me, there were lessons I learned from him which I've not forgotten and will never forget. Like one day he told me, he said, the most dangerous man in the world is a man who puts makeup on his face. So I said, sir, why is that? He said, no, I'm an actor also, I'm a director also. When I go to shoot and they put makeup on my face, I become a different personality. I start believing that I know more than anybody else, which I don't. So, the most dangerous people are actors. It's something he admitted himself. And he had a great sense of humor, which came out while he was working also. He had a special affinity with Russia. We're very happy to have Nina with us from Russia. She's on the jury for BRICS. And Nina has come down for that. Nina, and there's one incident which I will not forget is that he was very popular in Russia. I mean, they called him at that time, it was the USSR. He was referred to as Comrade Raj Kapoor. It was not Raj Kapoor. And people, even now, if you go to Russia, we just went to Tashkent, which is now the CIS, but it's from Russia itself. And women there would cry, seeing his photograph, cry looking at his son. And that emotionalism was there. And one evening at a party at his house, having a drink, and Abu Sahab and Chintu, they had a very good friend called Jerry Kirikano. Jerry was working in the American Embassy. So Raaz got a little emotional and said, Dabu, Chintu, my sons, come and sit on my lap. You've not sat on your father's lap for so much time, which got them thoroughly embarrassed. They're grown-up people, and he said, no, come and sit on my lap. So Jerry came running and sat on his lap. So he looked at Jerry, and Jerry said, you're calling Dabu and Chintu. And I'm also your son. I'm their brother, and I'm your son also. So Raaz looked at him and pushed him off that swing. And Jerry was on the ground. And Raaz turned around and told him, how can I be your father? You're an American, I'm a Russian. So I cannot be your father. So this is the way his humor also worked. And he was completely focused on his work. He lived, ate, drank only his film. That's all he did. Everything went around his film itself. And for me, he was a great influence on me, especially in my 4 films that were Love Story, Betab, Arjun, and Dakat, which he was there for me. And I used to run to him like a child runs to a teacher and tell him, sir, I've got this problem, how do I solve it? Or sir, I have to bounce this off him. And I was very fortunate that he was the best teacher in the world. That he would sit down and really explain to you things in great detail and tell you where you're going right, where you're going wrong. And that's how my relationship with him worked. And I don't think we'll ever have a director like Raj Kapoor in here again. I doubt it very much. He had told me once there's some statement I made which was wrong according to him, and I said, sir, you're wrong. And he said, no, I'm right. And you will know this down the head. And if you think I'm wrong and you are right, that's why you are an assistant director and I'm the director. So that's the difference between you and me. So, and he was very right, he was very focused, very clear about what he's doing.
Your love and a tremendous respect for him is so obvious in everything that you say, and I'm sure the book is a must-read not only for students of film or people who are passionate about Indian cinema, but even as something for people who seek inspiration about a great man and the work that he did. I know that every bit of it is interesting to you, but is there a favorite chapter in the book that you have written?
I can't say favorite chapter because his whole way of working and whatever has gone into that is very colorful as it is. So there's no favorite chapter. There is one chapter in it called Dambara Nights. Dambara was the projection operator in arcade where we all learned our way, and Raaz would never have a drink if he was working. So on certain days in the evening, once in a month maybe, his man Friday, Randhir would get a bottle of whiskey and put in the theatre, and we knew that we couldn't go into a Dambara night. And we went there and he poured a drink for everybody. And the operator, Damaraji, he's had assembled different scenes of RK, which were Raaz's favorite scenes. And that used to run through for 3 hours. And for me, as a 16-year-old starting work, for me this was absolutely fascinating. But I'd never seen things like this, you know. The first scene from Aag, when he comes up and sees the burnt face of the, you know, and then in Barsat, the scene with Nargis over there, Awaraz, and Awaraz dream sequence is something I'll never forget. And it goes on, the list goes on. And he would be seeing this, and he used to observe things very well. And he told me, he said, why are you standing in the corner? You know, why are you sitting down? I said, sir, you're there. I mean, I would have not sitting. So he said, you have some questions? I said, no, I don't. He said, don't lie to me, I can see on your face that you have questions. And if you don't ask, you will never get the answer, remember that. Ask me. So it was those Damara nights that I would ask him, or why he did certain things, what are the reasons why he did it. And he would go into lengthy explanations. So for me, that was a great part of learning. And I loved the way the operator used to, when the operator used to get tired, he used to run the song from Jagta, you know, Jago Mon Pyare Jago, it would be 4 o'clock in the morning. And the moment he said Jago Mon Pyare Jago, Raaz would get up and say, Acha Damara chahte ki main ghar jaun, chalo main chalta hu phir. So, you know, that was a routine which was followed. And even the sets, he would he'd go out of his way to explain things to you, tell you why he's doing things. And he had a reason. For everything had a reason. Starting from his inspiration for doing a film. Then the music, which he did. He played every single instrument in the world. He just played it. I mean, the keyboards had come new when the background music for Dabu Saab's color and he'd come there, background music, and he watched this instrument. And he was told it's a keyboard, it plays like this. And he just looked at it, and in exactly 5 minutes, he was playing. So he had this inborn, yes, absolutely inborn, and very fascinating.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's just so amazing listening to all those little bits. Randhir Kapoor ji, you did mention you read bits and bits parts of the book. Tell me which bits you found interesting from whatever you read.
The whole book is very good.
Yes, of course.
Please, I highly recommend it.
Highly recommended, ladies and gentlemen. But from your point of view, and knowing him as a father, what are you so happy to see in that book? Saying that I am so glad that this is here. Spoken about.
I'm very glad that Rahul has done this book on my father, his guru. And it's very different from the other books that have been written on the great Raj Kapoor. This is his style of working, which of course he knew better than me or anybody else, because he has been literally working with Mr. Raj Kapoor. And he's put it up very well. And like he said, my mother said that you must write this book, otherwise people will never know the real Raj Kapoor.
Thank you so much. Yes, because like you said, there's no one who has been closer to him, and he has done total absolute justice to it, including the foodie bit of it, right?
I hope people who read the book, if they do, I hope there are lots of people who read the book, and I hope it inspires them, and they appreciate what's been done. And I'd like to just read out the last, how I finished the book. It's just to tell you my entire relationship with my guru. So, if you don't mind, is it okay if I read out a small chapter?
Yes, please.
A small portion, a small portion. Okay, this is at the very end of the book. after he passed away. You know, he passed away also when he got the Dada Saheb Phalke Award. At the function, he was not well, and when his name was announced, and he stood up, and he collapsed over there. And then the President of India walked down from the dais and came up to him. Raaz stood up. He put the medallion around his neck, gave him the scroll, put the shawl, and Raaz went into a coma. I mean, it was like a film scene, and he never recovered from that coma. It was a death for a film person. I don't think it was greater because, you know, getting the award, the most coveted award for cinema. In fact, Kamala Hassan always told me, he said, "Oh, I wish I would die like that." You know, that's the way it happened. So this is the last bit. It says, the funeral procession left RK and walked the 2-kilometer distance to the crematorium. The mortal remains were carried to the pyre by the family. Most of the mourners, whose eyes were moist, could not come to terms with the death of Rahul. I stood alone in a state of shock and could not fathom that my guru, philosopher and guide, had left me orphaned. I was wondering how this would affect my life in my journey ahead. Who would I turn to for the advice? Who would be the artist critic of my creative journey? Would I creatively progress or stagnate? I have to admit that his going away had affected me very deeply. After the rituals were complete, the funeral pyre consigned to the flames by the 3 sons of Raaz, the flames engulfed the mortal remains of the master, and the fire rose and heralded the birth of the immortal Raj Kapoor. So this is so I think that about sums up my relationship with him. I just hope it feels the same way.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure everybody who's in this audience and many other audiences who will read about the book will be inspired by everything that you've written about it. Thank you so much for the book.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'd like to thank the ESG, Tariq Thomas here, Subhaji here. I'd like to thank them all for having me here. And
I do have a few more questions, sir. I don't think the audience has had enough. And since we have the honor of having Randhir Kapoor ji here, I'm going to take the liberty of asking a question about the challenge of directing two stalwarts in the industry, Prithvi Raj Sahab and Raj Kapoor Sahab. So how was it actually directing them?
Well, I must say that they were very obedient actors. They did exactly what was told to them. When as a novice I did my first day shoot in Kallajul Kal, in which my grandfather and my father, Mr. Raj Kapoor and Prithvi Raj Kapoor respectively worked. And the first shot, I explained to them that you come and you sit down in front of the gods. It was a temple scene. And he said, no, don't tell me this way. Karke dikhao. So I felt very odd. I am showing Prithvi Raj Kapoor, who has been in the business since most of us were not even thought of, even said conceived. But I showed it to them and he said, all right, then my father came and said, so you come from here and you sit down there. He said, karke dikhao. So I thought they were pulling my leg. I said, no, aap kariye na. He said, no, karke dikhao. Because remember, director is the captain of the ship, not the actor. We are like clay. We mold into what you make us. Otherwise, every picture that we would have been a classic. So director makes the film. और अगर तुमको नहीं आता है, तो नहीं आता है, then you sing. And if you know, then you say it. So that's how they work
That
with
was
me.
your experience. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you did have a good time doing that bit of it. Thank you so much. Rahul Rawail, I'm going to read this question exactly the way I have put it down on my notebook, on notes here, because I think it's very important for the young audience out here, all right? How do you want the reader, especially the modern generation, to perceive the book? Considering the fact that Raaz Saab was way ahead of his times. The table topics he explored in his films, they were probably something the modern generation will be able to relate to more now than in previous generations. So, how do you want them to relate to the book?
I think, we're not talking about the technique in the sense camera angles and things of that kind. Because they have changed over a period of time. Raaz Saab never worked on the equipment today, what we see people using. But what it really leads us, it leads you into a journey and into the mind of what this filmmaker thought about. Even the quirks, even the food habits were all things which were related to work, and it really builds this whole thing around how this man worked, how he functioned. And again, those 10 chapters I talk about, which are details about how he was inspired, how that inspiration turned into film, how the script came about, how the casting happened, how the music was composed, how the DOP did the cinematography, the sound, the edit till the release. And it talks in great detail. And especially Bobby, since I was an assistant on Bobby. And Bobby is described in 6 chapters on the work of Bobby. And there is also a very, very interesting portion in that of Mr. Premnath, who was again, I think, a genius. And he worked with us in Bobby. So there's lots about Mr. Premnath. And we were talking about biopics earlier. I think Premnath is the right person to talk about biopic on. He's the most colorful character we had.
Colorful is the right word. He was a bit of an eccentric. I worked with him in many films as a director and as an actor.
I was terrified of Premnath because once we had heard all these stories about him, and Raaz Saab had a quality in him. He was very supportive of his actors. If the actor made a mistake, if the actor was his son, he would scream at him. Okay, but if it was not the son, he would not scream at that man. So working with Premnathji also, they've done a shot, and Premnathji would say, "It's fantastic what I've done, and this is the right thing." And Raaz Saab would say, yeah, it's very good, Prem." And I should be standing next to him. And suddenly he turned to me and said, "Rahul, say what you want to." No, I didn't want to say anything. I not even. So he'd bring his close to my ear, and I would just mumble something. And he said, "Just keep quiet." Okay. And then he'd say, "Prem, Rahul feels that this shot, you've not done it correctly." Now this is what he wanted to say. Rahul wants this line to be spoken like this. And Premnathji gave me a dirty look, and he did it. Now, it didn't happen only once. Again it happened, and it happened again. One day he called me to the makeup room, and he used to sit with this harmonium. And he said, "Come here," as he is. He said, "Tell me one thing, you think you're bigger than Raj Kapoor?" I said, "No, I'm not, sir. When he likes my work, everybody claps. You, municipality, are the only man who says my work is wrong. Why? Give me an answer for that." I was terrified. I said, "This man might hit me." And I couldn't say anything for the boss. But that's the way he handles actors. Brilliant piece, right?
So I've got exactly 1001 more questions I can ask these wonderful gentlemen here. But I don't think the audience is going to forgive me. So I'm going to open it out for the audience. Anybody from the audience who would like to ask a question? Sir, 8 minutes. I will just...
Only one question.
Okay. Can we have a mic here for a very quick question, and then we have a gentleman behind? Yes, sure.
सॉरी सर, हिंदी की तरफ आता हूँ मैं। अंग्रेजी मेरी बहुत कमजोर है। मेरी प्रोफेसर अहमद आपने सर वो कपूर जी का जो रोमांस से शुरू किया था, जो उन्होंने 23 इयर्स में जो बरसात आवारा जो फिल्म बनाई थी, आपने भी उसी से इंस्पायर होकर लव स्टोरी बनाई। वो इतिहास में हमारी फिल्मों की एक यादगार फिल्म रही। इसके बारे में कुछ दो लफ्ज़। थैंक यू।
लव स्टोरी का जो इंस्पिरेशन था वो था बॉबी से, क्योंकि बॉबी पहली फिल्म थी जिसमें टीनेज लव स्टोरी थी। तो राज साहब और डिम्पल को लिया था उन्होंने और उससे इंस्पायर हुआ था मैं। इनफैक्ट बहुत से सीन्स हैं, बेताब में भी हैं, लव स्टोरी में भी है, जो मुझे बोलने में कोई शर्म नहीं आती कि they were exactly scenes of Raaz Kapoor, which I twisted and turned around, and I have no qualms about it. They were scenes of his which I have turned around, and I always told him I'm going to do this. It's okay. He said, of course we'll do it.
Thank you for the question. I think we have a gentleman behind, so.
This question is to Mr. Rahul.
Yes, sir.
What inspired you to direct on someone like Arjun Malwalkar?
Arjun Malwalkar was essentially that character. You know, Arjun did not have a story. Arjun was a character. He educated unemployed. And essentially he was a Maharashtrian. So that's why the set and all was put up according to Lal Bagh in those areas. And we decided that to make it definite. You know, normally the heroes never have surnames in our films. But we decided to call him Malwalkar so that essentially it is a Maharashtra. So that's how it came about as Arjun Malwalkar. Yes, sir.
Any more questions?
सर जी, रणधीर कपूर जी से सर एक छोटा सा सवाल है मेरा। सर, आप इतने बेहतरीन कलाकार हैं, इतने अच्छे एक्टर हैं और इतने बेहतरीन डायरेक्टर हैं। आपने हिना इतनी खूबसूरत फिल्म बनाई सर, इसके बाद फिर आपने कोई और फिल्म डायरेक्ट क्यों नहीं की सर?
एक्चुअली मुझे पकड़ के मारना चाहिए।
आपकी मार भी मेरे लिए प्रसाद होगा सर। एक थप्पड़ मुझे जरूर
आपको मुझे मारना चाहिए।
ना सर, आपको कैसे मारे सर? आप लोगों से तो हम इंस्पायर हुए सर। मुझे
कुछ इंस्पायर नहीं किया, कुछ अच्छा नहीं लगा। जिस किस्म की तस्वीरें हम ये 15-20 साल में बना रहे थे, मार धाड़ और जिसका कोई सिर है ना पैर ना समझ आता है, तो ऐसे कुछ दिल नहीं किया
जी
कुछ ऐसा मन नहीं आया
जी।
बट लगा हुआ था बाकी फिल्मों में जो हमने बनाई है उसमें भी मैं लगा हुआ था
जी सर।
पीछे से, कुछ आजू से कुछ बाजू से,
जी
बट अभी बनाएंगे।
हाँ सर, आप मैं इच्छा है कि आप एक पिक्चर डायरेक्ट कीजिए और आप बहुत ही बेहतरीन डायरेक्टर है सर। हिना अपने आप में बहुत आफ्टर ऑल राज साहब का कुछ तो अंश है आप में।
थैंक यू।
ये आप तो कह रहे हैं, ये मैं हर हफ्ते डोसा हो गया हूँ।
वाह वाह
इससे बनाइए आप, ये बना रहा हर हफ्ते इनसे कहता हूँ।
सर, मैं आपसे एक बार मुलाकात चंदा शॉ जी के थ्रू हुई थी। चंदा शॉ जी राइटर थे, आपसे मेरी मुलाकात हुई थी।
जी जी।
तब चंदा शॉ जी ने मुझे मिलवाया था आपसे।
जी जी
जी, और मेरा बहुत आना जाना था वहाँ पर। राज साहब आपके स्टूडियो में बहुत आना जाना था। तो मैंने पहली परफॉर्मेंस राज साहब की देखी थी मेरा नाम जोकर में, जो ऋषि कपूर को सिखा रहे थे एक्टिंग।
जी।
मैंने फर्स्ट टाइम राज साहब
वही
को देखा।
फोटो जो है
हाँ
बुक पे,
हाँ जी जी
कवर पे वही फोटो
जी
है,
जी
जहाँ वो ऋषि कपूर
जी। और शायद उस वक्त आप भी असिस्टेंट थे तो वही हो गए।
हाँ जी।
उस वक्त आप थे ना?
नहीं, मैं असिस्टेंट नहीं था। मैंने राज साहब को ज्वाइन किया था जब सर्कस का पोर्शन शुरू हुआ था।
जी जी
क्योंकि मैं सिर्फ 15 साल का था जब मैंने असिस्टेंट बन गया मैं।
जी जी।
तो उस वक्त तो ये शायद 2 साल पहले था उससे।
मुझे भी राज साहब का ही आशीर्वाद है। धर्म जी के बंगले पर उनसे मेरी मुलाकात हुई थी। मैंने आश्रम दिया, सर मैं एक छोटी सी पिक्चर डायरेक्ट करने जा रहा हूँ। कहता बेटा मेरा आशीर्वाद है। वो आशीर्वाद ही मेरे लिए बहुत बड़ा प्रसाद मिला है मुझे। और मैं फिल्म शुरू करने से पहले पूना में सर, जहाँ राजबाग में जो उनकी समाधि है, वहाँ जाकर मैंने उनकी पूजा की, उनके माता पिता की पूजा की। वहाँ प्रसाद चढ़ाई मैंने, हार फूल चढ़ाकर उनको मैंने अपनी फिल्म स्टार्ट की।
Thank you. I
Thank
think
you
we
very
have
much.
one more
Meharbani.
question. Yes. That will be the last question, sir. To keep it
सर
short.
जी, मेरा नाम डॉक्टर संजय जगताप फ्रॉम कोल्हापुर महाराष्ट्र। राज साहब की जो भी फिल्में बनाई गई वो सब मेरे जन्म के पहले हुई थी। जब मैं चाइल्डहुड में था तो मेरा एक उनकी फिल्म आई थी रामधरी गंगा में, वो बहुत अच्छी फिल्म बनी थी, उसका जिक्र इस बुक में है क्या?
रामधरी गंगा में का है, जिक्र है इसमें, और स्पेशली गाने को लेकर लोगों साहब ने कहा कि जी गाना जब वो 20 साल के बाद भी यूज़ करते थे। जब मैंने असिस्टेंट काम शुरू किया था राज साहब के साथ, when I started with him in 1968, I started working with him. So there were 2 songs, 2 गाने थे जो उन्होंने मेरे को सुनाए थे। One was झूठ बोले कौवा काटे, गाना पूरा सुना था उन्होंने। The other song was सुन साहिबा सुन प्यार की धुन, this is 1968. He did not know where he's going to get this, but he said these are 2 songs when I get the right situation of it. So झूठ बोले कौवा काटे came into Bobby in 1972. Sun Sahiba Sun came into Randhir Kapoor, which was much later. So these songs were composed and written and everything by Raaz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have one question. Can I please be allowed to ask it? It's there in the back of my mind. I cannot let it go, sir. It's a very well-known fact that Rishi Kapoor ji was a very close friend of yours. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if there's a reference of him in the book. But I also want to know if you're planning a separate book at all about Rishi Kapoor.
I mean, the publishers have suggested to me that if this book does well, I should do another book called Kapoor and Sons, which I would love to do, since I know them very well. So they've been talking about that. And as far as Rishi, can I have the book?
Yes.
I'll just take 5 minutes. This book is dedicated to Mr. Rishi Kapoor, Chintu. I'll just read out the dedication from the old song. Now, Rishi Kapoor was a childhood friend. 60 years we were in touch with each other. We were right from the kindergarten till here. So the foreword has been written by Randhir Kapoor ji, and the book is dedicated to Rishi Kapoor. It says here, the book is dedicated to Chintu, my truest friend, my rock, my brother. You not just pushed me into putting together this book, but also showered me with the choicest abuses whenever I would get lazy about writing. Chintu, you are truly my champion since our childhood, from the classroom to the movie sets, to the culmination of this book. My regret is that you could not read it, but I know that wherever you are cheering me on, and I miss you immensely, and look forward to seeing you on the other side. This is my dedication.
Well, you have a question, ma'am? Yes, okay. One last one. I'm so sorry. It'll have to be a quick one. Yes.
हेलो सर, गुड इवनिंग सर। मेरा जो प्रश्न है वो इस किताब के लिए नहीं है। मैं आपसे एक प्रश्न पर्सनली ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि आपने जितनी भी पिक्चर्स बनाई हैं उसमें आपने सन्नी देओल जी को ही काफ़ी लिया है, क्या कोई विशेष कारण है उसका?
देखिए,
वो सस्ते में मिल जाते हैं।
देखिए, पहली बात तो ये है कि सनी देओल और मेरा कोई अफेयर नहीं था।
नहीं, हो भी सकता है
आजकल हो
सब
सकता है,
चलता
हो सकता है। तो मैं ये बता दूं, कोई अफेयर नहीं था। बात ये था सनी के साथ, क्योंकि पहली फिल्म मैंने की थी, I did Beta, which was first film, and because it was a successful film, and then I did Arjun, where the character was completely different from Beta. What I saw in Sunny was a certain vulnerability in his face, which is not there in very many actors. He's tough, but he's very vulnerable. So So that's where Arjun came in. And then it was rishta nahi, it's not a relationship. It's yeah, you guys will pick it up as something else. It's a friendship, which it just happened that I did films with Sunny after that.
नहीं सर, रिश्ता दूसरे सेंस में भी हो सकता है।
हाँ, तो मैं दूसरे सेंस की बात कर रहा हूँ, जो आप सोच रहे हो वो सेंस की नहीं कर रहा हूँ।
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think I really do not have time for any more questions. I'm sure we can just kind of keep that back. I'm going to request Mrs. Manmataji up on stage along with CEO Dr. Tariq and VC ESG for a photograph. It'll be wonderful.